Hello and welcome to the Wheel of Crime podcast. This podcast is ran by two ladies who play games, mumble profanities, and laugh way too often. Also, this podcast does cover topics of sensitive nature, and as such, listener discretion is advised.
Oh boy.
Okay. I feel like I glitched literally in the middle of me speaking because my brain fast forwarded to this part of the show where we're like, "Hi, welcome to the Wheel of Crime podcast. My name is Jen and my name is Emily." And I pulled through though. I did pull through.
You did. By the way, my name is Jen. Welcome to the Wheel of Crime podcast.
And my name is Emily. Welcome to the Wheel of Crime podcast.
Nice to meet you, Em. Are you having an okay time over there?
It's been okay. I'm not sick currently, so already a lot better than it has been. But besides that, I honestly don't really have anything new to share. I'm kind of at the end of my work season here for how busy it is. So just pulling the 10 to 12 hour days. I come home, I make a snack, have a shower, go to bed, or wake up and do it all over again. And that's basically it.
That's crazy. The day we're recording this a little bit in advance just because end of August is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
But the day that this episode's going up, my brother will be getting married this weekend.
Ooh la la, very exciting.
Yes, it's crazy. I don't know why, but sometimes, when you have siblings where you're it's hard to picture them as an adult person doing adult stuff.
As a husband with a wife.
Yeah,
yeah. No, I've often thought
I'm the youngest, but I can't. I don't know. It's crazy that my brother's getting married.
I know, but at least it's your older brother. See, I've often thought about what it'll be like for my siblings to get married, but it's almost weirder because I am the oldest sibling. So then I'm look at all these toddlers walking around looking for spouses. What are they doing?
It's true. I went down for a visit to our hometown the other day to visit Emily specifically, and we were sitting at her parents' kitchen table with her youngest sister, and she was like, "Oh yeah, I drove here," and I was like, "You can drive?
Yeah.
Who allowed that? How old are you? What's going on?"
I'm still not entirely sure how that happened. Love you, bestie, because I know you listen to the podcast, but I remember being 16 and thinking back now, I'm surprised any of us were allowed to drive. I'm surprised you were allowed to drive with you going over the curbs with your Chipotle chicken wraps leaking down your arms every day.
It happened one time, and it's because the chicken wrap exploded onto my arm, and it doesn't happen anymore. You know why? Because I'm a vegetarian now.
This is true. It would just be only Chipotle sauce on the wrap if you were to do it nowadays, which might actually make things worse.
I think it would. I do not eat and drive now. I feel like I've learned my lesson. I had to replace that tire, and honestly, since then, it was so expensive. I learned my lesson.
Fair enough. See, I've learned my lesson for certain things. I'll eat and drive if it's a manageable thing. But, if it's a Subway sandwich, I'm just gonna park somewhere and eat it.
Yeah, well, that's probably for the best.
You see, I didn't hit anything, thankfully, but I was eating a Subway sandwich once and driving, but I had a rogue onion roll under my seat just out of reach, and it was, during the peak of the summer last year, and hot, melting red onion in a black car has got to be one of the worst experiences I've ever had. I would get in there and I had a type of air freshener that people usually buy if they smoke in their cars called Scent Bomb, and I would just annihilate my vehicle with this thing because it would just stank not even moldy, melting onion. It was cooking itself underneath my seat. It was terrible.
That sounds awful.
See, it was an assault on my senses rather than my wallet, which is nice in that sense. But would I want to have that experience again? No. I'm good, actually.
These are the life lessons you learn. Hopefully your younger sister is listening so she can have these words of wisdom. Don't eat Chipotle chicken wraps unless you want to buy a new tire.
And don't eat Subway sandwiches
unless you want to annihilate your car with air freshener.
Yeah, and have nobody want to drive with you.
Bestie, I promise neither of those are good.
No, neither of them. But yes, so it is my episode today, and I am very excited to share with you what my topic is, because I've kind of already alluded it to you in the past.
Ooh.
Right? I know, very exciting. So, on that note, let us begin with our wheel of questions.
Let's go.
What would you do if you ever saw something unbelievable, or have you? So the scenario I'm picturing is you're by yourself and you see something where you know if you tell anybody what you saw, nobody's gonna believe you.
I mean, I think I would try and get a photo or a video.
See, I feel like I've had a couple of those experiences before, but I could not care less if nobody believes me. I will tell everyone. I'll be like, oh my god, I'm a crazy lady. Look at what I saw.
I mean, fair. I mean, I think I've been on the receiving end of those things with you.
Oh, absolutely you have. You and Andrew, like, get the most of my madness with, like, a sprinkling of my mom in there somewhere.
It's true. I don't know. I really feel like if I was like, oh my god, like, what the fuck is happening? I genuinely believe I would be the person to whip out her phone, even in the face of danger. Or I would repress it and tell no one.
See, that checks out for you. I honestly believe that. Because, like, in my own experience with, like, things I've had that are, like almost unbelievable situations, I've been so shocked that just, like, the thought of even pulling out my phone doesn't cross my mind, or it just happens so quickly that, like, if I don't already have my phone out, it's like, well, what the fuck do you even do, right?
Yeah. I feel like that's hard. I feel like it would be hard to, like, I feel like when you're in that state of panic, like, the thing that you're trying to do, you, like, for some reason can't do it as fast as you normally could because you're, like, fumbling and, like, all twitchy and sweaty.
Oh, literally.
Or is that just
like,
me?
if I could pull out my phone and have it set to recording like you would, like, a gun on a holster belt, like, that would be mint. Just like, recording.
Oh, I'm getting it.
Yep, I'm getting the good stuff. See, I feel like I've felt a lot. I've shared a lot of things on the show already that are, like, probably unbelievable, but I don't know. You only got one life, and I believe that not everybody's meant to understand everything anyways. So if you see an alien, power to you. Good one.
Power to ya.
Power to you.
Yes.
That's all I gotta say. Because I got no elaboration on that.
Exactly.
All right, let's get to our next question. Okay, what is your favorite kind of bug?
Personally, I hate bugs. They are creepy and creep me out.
Yes.
Because they are creepy.
Yes.
But if I had to pick one, it would be caterpillar/butterfly. Not moth. Butterfly.
Really? Okay. Butterflies are really pretty. I feel like that one's like an easy way into, like, picking a favorite insect. But here's another weird thing, though. So I remember going to college with a girl who was, like, deathly afraid of butterflies.
I have met a couple of people who are afraid of butterflies, too. It's very odd to me because I'm like...
Right, because they can't bite you. They cannot bite you. They cannot kill you in any way. They're very pretty to look at. I don't understand where the fear comes from.
I mean, people could probably say the same thing about beetles, right? Because most of them won't bite you, but they're fucking creepy looking and I don't like it. If I see one when I'm walking on the street, I will scream and run to the other side of the street. That's just a fact.
This checks out, yes.
It will startle whoever I'm with, and they will be like, Jen, why did you scream? And I'll be like, look on the ground in front of you. Like, is it not obvious?
You didn't see? I'm just trying to think. That actually reminded me of something else. Because you and I went to different middle schools at one point. But there was a girl we went to middle school with, who was also really afraid of ladybugs. Which, like, the worst that they can do is pee on you. Which I think at that point, they're definitely more afraid of you than you are of them.
I'm trying to remember. I feel like that sounds vaguely familiar, but I can't think of who
Genuinely,
it would be.
In my brain, all I have is middle school, girl afraid of ladybugs. That's the only connection I can make. I cannot remember who it was.
It does sound vaguely familiar, but I can't remember if just because you've told me about this girl or if I actually met her.
Right. But that's another one where I'm like, I'm not really sure where the fear comes from. Like, creepy, yes, but of all the potential bugs to be afraid of, I would not necessarily pick that one. I would pick one that might be a little bit more dangerous, like a giant spider. or a scorpion, which, although it is not technically a bug, I consider it a bug. So those ones would be among my least favorites, but I actually think my favorite kind of bug is moths. I really do like moths a lot.
Really? I don't know.
They're just they look so fluffy and dusty, and I just like them.
See, the thing I dislike about moths is how dusty they look. It freaks me out. You know why? Because I used to like them as a kid, and then my dad was like, don't touch their wings, because the dust or whatever that comes off, you'll like fuck them up for life. And so I was just so afraid of hurting them that I was like, I can't touch their dusty wings.
But it's the same thing with butterflies. If you touch a butterfly wing, they're not going to fly ever again for the same reason. You just can't see their dust.
Yeah, but I was never tempted with butterflies because I couldn't see the dust, whereas the dust was visible on moths.
You're like, I'm just going to peel the dust right off of you there. Give you a wee bath.
Like, I never did it, but the thought of accidentally doing it gave me genuine fear. And I was afraid they eat my clothes.
See, that was my one thing, is that I had a love of fabrics growing up, like clothing and blankets and stuffed animals, and although I did beef with them a little bit over who got to have the clothes, because they would eat holes in my clothing, I still really liked them. I'm pretty sure there's actually a video of me somewhere, of me 18 at a party somewhere that somebody was having in their backyard. And they had one of those, like, really, really big ones that we get sometimes. You know what I'm talking about? Like, they're the size of your hand. And there's literally a video of me with this moth in my hand giving it a little kiss on its forehead. And then it flies away.
Aw, you should post that on our Instagram.
And I was very litty at the time. I don't know who took the video, though, is the thing, because it was on somebody else's phone. It wasn't on mine. And it was definitely on Snapchat.
See, that's why I don't use Snapchat.
See, robbing memories. But yeah, I do remember that happening, though, at one point. In a very nice, cute, sweet way. He's just a little baby boy.
Just a little baby moth boy.
Baby moth boy. All right, so then let's move on to our next question. If anything, what would you be notorious for? Like, say it's like 200 years in the future, right? And people are talking about you in, like, history books or something, what on earth would they be talking about? Like, what would you be notorious for?
Well, I can hope and dream it's for my filmmaking career, but realistically, it's probably for something fucking embarrassing. Like, that would just be my luck. Okay,
I see. See, at this point in my life, I imagine that it'll be in a medical journal for some mysterious respiratory illness that apparently makes people sick for months at a time. Because that's recent in my life.
You know what? I could believe that. I can believe that doctors would study you and be like, how does one woman get sick 10 months out of a year?
See, and then I imagine they keep my tonsils in, like, a preservative jar with, like, my name on it. See?
I would love that.
It would check out.
It would check out.
But, like, if I was picking, like, something ideal, I don't know, some great thing that I haven't accomplished yet would be my hope, where it's like, wow, she's amazing. I wish she was around today so I could ask her questions, and I would be like, yes, my pupils, here are the answers.
For most cats adopted to loving homes from a cat cafe owner.
That would be a good one. I would really love that.
Yes.
All right. Next question. Okay. I think this is actually our last question. All right. So what are your thoughts on nighttime driving?
I don't really mind it, to be honest. I kind of like nighttime driving, especially like a cool breeze on like a end of summer, early fall night. You know, got some tunes. I got my mans with me. Mm-hmm. Could be a good vibe.
All right. See, it's another thing with us being such good friends is that we have so much similarities for like random ass things. I'm very much in the same boat. I like nighttime driving because it's like peaceful, quiet. There's not a bunch of like idiots in the road. Well, normally. I mean, obviously there's still a chance.
Yes.
But like being able to listen to your music, get some like a nice cool wind blowing through after like a hot day, like that is nice. I will say though, when I first started driving, I was a little bit spooked out with driving at nighttime just because, like, I didn't really know kind of what the roads were like yet. And then also in our place that we grew up in, there's a lot of deer in the area. And so, like, at sunset and sunrise, the roads are just full of them. And they will jump out of nowhere right in front of your vehicle. And so I was always very worried, too, of hitting an animal.
That's fair. Honestly, I feel like I weirdly did get a bit of experience with nighttime driving when I had my learners, just because, like, I remember, like, going out to, like, camping with my parents, and sometimes my mom would let me drive or whatever if it wasn't, like, super late, but it was kind of dark out. So I feel like I kind of got that, like, nervousness out of the way while I still had, like, my learner's permit. But, like, the only time I've ever really been spooked out driving at night is, my dad got into a really bad accident on his birthday it was on Father's Day a couple of years ago. They were out camping. I went to go see them. I got there. He had just gotten into a huge quadding accident, had to be rushed to the emergency room. Anyways, I ended up driving from the campsite. So I drove from Calgary to the campsite that day, and then I drove from the campsite to the hospital, back to the campsite, then to our hometown to get some things for my parents because he had to be airlifted to Calgary, and then my brother needed a ride back to our hometown as well. So then I, like, drove back again and then back to Calgary. And so by the time I was, like, on my way back to Calgary, it was literally 4 a.m. I had been up for almost 24 hours because I had woken up at 6 that morning for work. And I was driving on, like, the back highways because I, like, just couldn't. I was just overtired and could not figure out how to get back to Highway 2, like, the main highway where we live. And so I was taking all these back roads, and I was driving my old car, which was very, very low to the ground. And I was going, like, 110 or something because that was the speed limit, and it was super foggy out, and my headlights came up, and I saw a giant moose in the middle of the road, and I slammed on my brakes, and I literally almost hit it.
See, it's so weird too because, like, I remember being taught to drive, and they're always like, yeah, like, if you ever see an animal in the road, like, usually hitting your brakes, like, will do more damage. Like, they usually are like, yeah, you just hit it. Moose are one thing, though, where, like, unless you're a semi-truck, you should be doing everything in your power not to hit it. Because if you did, like, 9 times out of 10, what happens with moose, just for our listeners, because I'm picturing that most of you aren't from Canada, the moose are, like, enormous. They are very huge, and they're very powerful and very dangerous. So if you do end up hitting one, what'll happen is if you are in a vehicle that is a car or a van or a truck or anything around that size, the body will go through the front windshield, and then they start to kick. So if you're not crushed by the body when the impact first happens, you will get stomped to death. And then that's just what happens. They do not die on impact. They are so heavy and so tall that the most damage you'll ever do to a moose is maybe break its leg. It will more likely kill you rather than the other way around.
Literally, like, the way that, like, it was a big boy. Mm-hmm. And so my, like, front bumper or whatever, because my car is low to the ground and long. So literally, like, my front bumper would have hit its fucking legs. So, like, the only way I could really picture that happening is, like, me lifting it up its feet and its fucking giant antlers coming through my windshield and impaling me.
Oh, that's the
that
other
was
thing,
just
yeah.
like the, like, way that I saw it happening. So I was, like, swerving, stomping on my brakes. Thank God I was the only person on the road. Mm-hmm. But, like, I felt like I was, like, half awake before that, but I was, like, vigilant. After that, I was, like, shaking the rest of the way back to Calgary. Oh, yeah. And then I, like, dropped stuff off at the hospital and then went home, and I was like, I literally almost died. That's fun.
Oh, yeah, no, there's nothing like a near-death experience on the road to really keep you awake for the rest of your trip. See, so I drive a lot in the winters, and so most of my near-death experiences with cars come from, like, icy roads normally. But I've had a couple of like really bad fishtailing ones where like I've almost lost control of my car. And in those times, it's like I feel my heart in my throat and I'm like white knuckling the steering wheel and I just turn down the volume on my radio and drive home in silence.
Literally, that's what I did. I think I drove in silence for the rest of the night with the window open so that like the breeze would be hitting me and my eyes were like wide as fuck. And I was just like shaking because it was just so scary.
Oh yeah, I believe it. Definitely, I think that is probably a good indicator of whether or not you've had a near-death experience is, what color are my knuckles? Are my fingernails embedded in my palms? How big are my eyes? And, and do I think I'm gonna throw up? Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And then just quiet pondering for a few hours.
Thankfully, I wasn't that much further away from like the main highway, but I was like, I need to get off this back road immediately.
Like, can you imagine if you so like let's say worst case scenario you did end up hitting the moose and it led to your demise. Can you imagine how Canadian of a death that would be? Like to have on your tombstone, death by moose? Nobody would ever let that go.
I'm glad that it would bring other people joy because I would be dead.
Well, I would put it in your eulogy so everybody knew exactly how you left.
Was impaled by moose.
Well, it would be cooler than death by illness, which we thought was going to happen to us like a month ago, so.
That is true, so I guess I should count my blessings.
Yeah. We'll call that. Okay, I'm gonna put out some good vibes now, because we're definitely not wanting to will that on anybody anytime soon. But, on that note, we have gone through our questions, so what do you think I am talking about with you today?
I know you don't like it when I say this word. Am I allowed to say it?
It's not that, and don't say it.
Okay, I'll let our listeners just guess what we're talking about there.
A windy boy. We've already talked about the windy boys before. That's why we're not talking about it again.
Fine. I bet it's some spooky creature, Mothman or something, that is found when someone is driving at night.
Well, you would be right. We're talking about Mothman today.
Ha ha ha, I knew it!
Well, I told you, I was like, we talked about this recently. We have not talked about Windy Boys in probably over a year, so I don't even know where that came from. But no, like, literally the last time we did the show, we were talking about cryptids, and I was like, yeah, like the Mothman. And then I thought about it, and I was like, I obviously have never told you about the Mothman, so now today is your day.
Today's my day. Well, take it away,
All right, so as always, we're gonna start with the description first. So, in West Virginia folklore, the Mothman is a humanoid creature reportedly seen in the Point Pleasant area from November 15th, 1966 to December 15th, 1967. The first newspaper report was published in the Point Pleasant Register, dated November 16th, 1966, titled "Couple Sees Man-Sized Bird Creature Something." And the national press soon picked up on the reports and helped to spread the story across the United States. So, the Mothman was introduced to a wider audience by Gray Barker in 1970 and was later popularized by John Keel in his 1975 book, The Mothman Prophecies, claiming that there were supernatural events related to the sightings and a connection to the collapse of the Silver Bridge. The book was later adapted into a 2002 film starring Richard Gere, and an annual festival in Point Pleasant is devoted to the Mothman legend, which I think we talked about last time too.
Yes. There's nothing like capitalizing on
people's fears and
mythological
creatures. Yes. I mean, it's at least fun, if anything else. I would rather go to the Mothman Festival than most other festivals that I have been to, so.
You know what? That's a fair point. I'll give you that one.
Right? So then, on that note, let's get into our little story.
Yes. Yes, let's
Yeah.
get into it. I'm
So-
rubbing my hands together like a fly. This is what
very-
Emily showed me the other night.
In a very devious yet humorous way.
Ha 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 ha
Ha
ha.
ha ha ha. All right, so without further ado, in the town of Point Pleasant, West Virginia, offers its residents a landscape once claimed for France by a 17th century explorer. A namesake battle site many swear is the first of the Revolutionary War, and a bipedal humanoid moth-like creature with glowing eyes, the last of these local treasures, which is, of course, extraordinary. So, lovingly dubbed Mothman, the creature is seen has risen from local appearances to the national stage as a leader in the cryptid revival in the last 20 years. Cryptids, which are creatures whose existence are unsubstantiated, like Bigfoot and the Loch Ness Monster, are found in folklore through the United States and in the world. The cryptid comeback not only brings exciting mysteries into the lives of outsiders, but promotes pride of place to the residents of towns like Point Pleasant. According to competing theories, it was here on November 15th, 1966, that Mothman emerged from either the depths of hell, which we can only hope, or the upper echelons of space. So, Roger and Linda Scarberry and Steve and Mary Millette were driving together on State Route 62 near the abandoned National Guard Armory building and power plant when they saw a menacing figure standing about 6 or 7 feet tall, and in the headlights, giant eyes shone bright red. Panic set in. Roger and the car's driver sped away towards town, but the creature followed them. According to these first eyewitness accounts, the thing rose up like a helicopter, so I love that description too, because I just envision, like, its wings spinning like helicopter blades above
That's
it.
exactly what I was picturing as well. I was like, just like in my head, like a helicopter, hey?
Well, that was my thing. I was like, okay,
rotating wings?
Yeah, I was like, I don't know how many helicopters these people have seen, but, like, if I was to rise like a helicopter, I imagine I'm wearing pigtails and my head is spinning really fast, and that is how I'm rising.
Like, is his whole body swimming, or just the wings, do you think?
I mean, for his own sake, I assume the wings, because with the rest of you, I would definitely throw up.
Maybe he's got a really strong stomach.
He could. I mean, he is the Mothman. He can do anything he wants.
Exactly. It only makes sense.
Right? So, the helicopter, though a clumsy runner, as they saw at the power plant, it excelled in gliding, easily keeping pace even as the car reached 100 miles per hour. The creature's debut ruffled the town's feathers, making for an unsure headline the next day in the Point Pleasant Registry. So, like I said, couples see man-sized bird creature something. The stereotypical inclination for a small town is to form an angry mob. And they did do that. So rather than raising pitchforks and torches for several nights, though, curious town people made hunting rifles their preferred weapon. So these people said, oh yeah, Mothman? Let's get the gun.
How very American of them.
Isn't it? I wouldn't even have had to say where this happened, and I think we could have come to that conclusion ourselves.
I think so. You just had to tell me they got guns instead of pitchforks, and I'd be like, ah, yes, sounds like Florida.
Alright, so, like I said, guns, which, like, alright. And with this initial contact, and according to written reports, Mothman would be responsible for a host of strange sightings and events in Point Pleasant and the surrounding areas, lurking outside of homes, chasing cars, and stealing pet dogs. So,
Aw, he just wants a friend.
that's what I'm choosing to go with, too. Most people think about that where, like, obviously he's looking for a snack, and I'm like, maybe he's lonely.
He just wants a puppy. I can relate.
Right? If I was a Mothman and I wanted a pet, I'd be like, obviously I would already take one that looks like it is a pet, rather than going and finding one on my own. So
Exactly. A man's best friend, Mothman, you know?
Mothman's best friend. I mean, it's a natural inclination, in my opinion.
It is. It literally just makes sense.
Right? So, the day before Mothman stretched his leathery wings above the couple's car, it's possible he made a stop at Newell Partridge's home in Salem, West Virginia. This account, chronicled in John Creel's book The Mothman Prophecies, tells of a German shepherd named Bandit who bolted into the woods after 2 glowing red circles. Partridge says he looked for Bandit but found nothing but paw prints going in circles and then vanishing. So we'll never know if this was the true birth of Mothman's story. 2 glowing circles may not a Mothman make, though. And was Bandit's story, Bandit's story would have never have surfaced without the frightening tale of the Scarberry's close encounter. So it's kind of like, who's to say? But, Mary Heyer, a journalist within the Athens, Ohio Messenger, the local news source for the northern neighbors of Point Pleasant, found herself covering these strange sightings and encounters. Her first article, entitled Winged Red-Eyed Thing Chases Point Pleasant Couples Across the Countryside, appeared without delay on November 16th, 1966. She joined forces with big shot New York paranormal journalist John Keel for his previously mentioned work, The Mothman Prophecies, and this non-fiction record of the odd occurrences and subsequent 2002 film starring Richard Gere, like I mentioned in the beginning, would launch Mothman and the West Virginia town into the national stage. But by the time of the movie's premiere, Point Pleasant itself had lost direct sight of Mothman. The creature had laid low since the deadly collapse of the Silver Bridge in December of 1967. Many saw no connection in an alleged sighting just before the collapse, while some viewed Mothman as a sinister harbinger of doom. Since then, Mothman seems to have kept to himself, until recently. So, in 2019, accounts of a flying moth creature in Chicago stoked the paranormal creature craze. But as he makes national news once again, an NPR inquiry was entitled The Case of the Chicago Mothman. Lovers of the unknown and unsubstantiated should remember exactly where his roots lie and where a 12-foot tall statue of his likeness by Bob Roach stands in Point Pleasant. So, basically what all of that was, in summary, because it was a lot of information, is in 2019, a Mothman sighting popped up, which will have been the first since literally the 1970s. But it was in Chicago, not West Virginia. So in West Virginia, though, they do have a statue now dedicated to the Mothman because this is kind of where his, beginnings are said to have happened. And that statue in question is around 12 feet tall, though.
Ah.
Right?
That's a big statue.
Well, that was my thing. Is so even though that's the other thing. So all the reports say he was only 6 to 7 feet tall. I say only as if I'm not 5 feet. But 12 is that's a big boy. That's a significant jump from 7 feet tall to 12 feet tall.
That's a tall Mothman,
right? He should play basketball. That's instead of haunting couples. That's my thing.
I think that too. I think maybe he just needs a new career. Maybe just needs to mix things up a little bit, find his passion in life, and then he would leave everyone else alone.
See, but if basketball coaches think the same way you do, though, they might be worried about him getting dust all over the court.
That's true. These are the prejudices that Mothman has to face.
The prejudices behind moths and the Mothmen.
It's true.
We must
Mothy
rise
boy.
and protect him.
Him and his dusty wings.
Hey, I love him. I'm all about it. But then from there, from the story of Mothman, one can learn the importance of hometown, homegrown heroes of the dark woods and the roads less traveled. In 2006, Jeff Wamesley, a Point Pleasant native who grew up listening to the stories, his father worked at the National Guard Armory and opened the Mothman Museum to showcase all of the archival material that he had assembled from that time. So the collection features police reports and witness accounts from the various sightings, and although at the time he was just 6 years old when Mothman bewildered the people of Point Pleasant, blah, say that 5 times fast, the first time, Wamesley released 2 books on the subject through the Mothman Press. Mothman, Facts Behind the Legend in 2001, and Mothman Behind the Red Eyes in 2005. So, Wamesley's museum offers Mothman history and produces an annual festival which grows in attendance each year. Had it not been for the pandemic in 2020, Wamesley estimates that Point Pleasant would have again welcomed crowds totaling over 15,000 people.
Oh, wow. So a big hike in tourism for them.
Mothman's a really, really popular cryptid. before me even covering this story or mentioning him in like my last story episode of the Ogopogo, have you ever heard of the Mothman before that?
Like I said in our last, in your last episode, I've heard of him. I just didn't know any information, didn't know his story, didn't know where he came from, didn't know that he had a 12-foot statue. I'd heard the inklings of Mothman, I think probably from the Richard Gere movie, but nothing beyond that.
Okay. Because, yeah, no, so the deal with the Mothman is, as far as, like, cryptids go, he's considered to be one of the most popular ones, but the thing is like, the internet has a particular obsession with the Mothman. He has a lot of depictions in, like, fan fiction. People,
of course he does.
Yeah, like, people
him
will
fucking
write,
Hermione or what?
Literally, like, stuff like that, where it's like, or like Reader bewitches Mothman, like stuff like that. Like, people are all over it. There's like plushies of the Mothman that you can buy, artwork of the Mothman you can buy. Like, it's like a whole thing.
I mean, fair enough. If you love the Mothman, then what else is there?
See,
Just
I figure
the
that people who think that the Mothman is attractive, because really that's, I think, a big part of it too, otherwise they wouldn't write fan fiction about him, is the same fascination that people have for, like, the Swamp Thing, and, like, werewolves, and that kind of thing. It's, like, this weird idea of something that's, like, not quite human, but, like, they're like, but maybe it's sexy, we don't know.
It's true, he's so mysterious. We love a man of mystery.
A man of mystery. Again, sorry for the motorcycles in the background. I cannot control them. I can only hate them from afar. And so, like I said, 15,000 people go to this festival, which is a massive influx for the town itself, which only has about 5,000 residents.
Oh, wow. That's...
that's 10,000 extra people once a year who flood their town because of the Mothman, which to me makes sense on why the Mothman's like, maybe I'm gonna move to Chicago instead. Too popular around these parts.
He's like, no one will recognize me in Chicago. I gotta get to the big city.
Yeah, I imagine he's a lot like Keanu Reeves in that sense. I think out of all the cryptids, Mothman is the most Keanu Reeves out of all of them, is what I'm picturing.
Yes, just looking for some privacy and deep dish pizza.
That's all he wants in life. Which, good for him. Good for him.
I understand. Makes sense.
And so, in this way, Mothman finds his way onto t-shirts, local cafe cookies, and Etsy shops, in case you yourself wanted to buy a Mothman-themed item, as I know you are just so curious about him.
It's true. I was Googling Mothman merch as we were talking.
Yep, you were like, Mothman times Reader, slow burn romance.
Exactly. You know me so well, Em.
Of course, we're like the same person. So then, beyond that, we do have a couple quotes. So, Wamesley says, I think the Mothman story is timeless. It's never been fully solved or proven as to what these people were seeing, and people come here to see for themselves and investigate on their own to make up their own minds. Everybody has their own theory and is now a part of the town's history. So, Rosemary Hathaway, an associate professor of English at West Virginia University, defines the revival of cryptid mania as a renaissance. At the heart of the comeback of Mothman and his West Virginia cryptid contemporaries, like Sheep Squatch and the Flatwoods Monster, which personally I've never heard of before. Maybe I'll like cover more obscure cryptids in the future. But among them is a bubbling sense of pride and resurgence of traditional storytelling by and for small town residences. Historically, West Virginia's identity has been defined to outsiders by its extraction industry. If they do know about West Virginia, they tend to have stereotypes. Cletus the slack-jawed yokel and a miner, says Hathaway, the daughter of two West Virginia natives and a VU, man, I gotta go to bed, alumni. So that would be West Virginia University. So And by introducing their legends to outsiders, they've made a advantageous grab for financial gain and invented a new way to educate and engage tourists. So there
Makes
you go.
sense.
Right? And so, as a folklorist and educator, Hathaway notes that the disconnect between the stereotypes and the cultural significances of stories like Mothman. She says there definitely is a long storytelling tradition in West Virginia, and I think it tends to historically follow along two lines. Either it's tall tales or a long tradition of ghost stories and the supernatural and weird things happening in the woods. That sort of thing. My sense is that cryptid stories are the more modern version of ghost stories. So, according to Hathaway, ghost stories and weird things in the woods exist as cautionary tales and in some cases as indicators of the respect small town people have for the natural world, which I think is kind of like a nice way of looking at that too.
Definitely a nice way of putting it.
For sure. So, Kim Stryker, who teaches folklore at George Mason University, reckons this supernatural interest springs up in society when a distraction is needed. The last 20 years, she says, have meant unprecedented challenges to everyday life, and that in periods of great political and societal upheavals, stories like that of Mothman are greatly welcomed. And she says, people seek out evil in history too, in a way inoculate themselves from scary or terrible events, Stryker mentions, explaining the allure of dark tourism, or why people intentionally vacation in places associated with paranormal events or true crimes. Hathaway believes that stories like Mothman show that there is something of value in West Virginia, and praises people of small towns for taking advantage of the strange phenomena in the deep woods and the tall mountains. There's money to be made with these cryptids, and I'm glad they're doing it. Which, like, I'm actually kind of with her on that one, with the amount of, like, small towns that either are no longer gaining a lot of, financial, like, lifting either from the railroad or something that's now, like, a defunct business. Like, yeah, why not if this is gonna, give your town an income, right?
I mean, it makes sense. It's like those old mining communities near us that now just, like, give tours of them because that was their main business, and now they gotta divert in some other way.
There we go, right? And I personally love a good museum, especially about, like, that kind of stuff, so I'm all for it.
Emily will be traveling to West Virginia for the Mothman Parade and Museum.
It
and
will
that's
be
that.
me plus 14,999 other people at the Mothman Museum.
Yes, it's going to be very packed. She might get COVID for a third time. Who knows?
Oh, probably. At that point, it'll be more like the 7th time, so let's be realistic here. Point Pleasant has become a prime destination for dark tourism in this regard. So, as many locals tell it, the story of Mothman goes beyond the alleged sightings, spilling into mentions of men in black, extraterrestrial life forms, and conspiracy theories. Tourists are offered the chance to solve the mystery of the anomalous being and take home special Mothman memorabilia, crafts, and pastries from the museum, shops, and cafes of Point Pleasant's downtown district, which, I won't lie to you, that actually does sound like a lot of fun. Like, imagine, like, you're just, like, in this town, you're checking out the museum, and you can get, like, a Mothman bagel. Like, come on. Or, like, a Mothman donut.
Mothman cookie, Mothman coffee.
To put in your Mothman tote bag beside your Mothman action figure and your Mothman comic book.
And while you're wearing your Mothman sweater and Mothman sweatpants.
And your Mothman custom Nikes or whatever else that they sell out there.
With your Mothman hat and your Mothman earrings.
And your Mothman wings, because you have to dress also like the authentic Mothman.
You're just outfitted. You've spent thousands of dollars on your Mothman attire. Why
Obviously.
not get the Mothman toaster strudel?
Oh, yep. All moth, all man, all the time. That's all I'm asking for.
Exactly.
It's such a small thing in the bigger picture.
It just, do what brings you joy. And if getting the Mothman bagel is what does it for you, each to their own.
That's what I'm saying. And so, while outsiders theorize about the existence of Mothman, Point Pleasant natives like Wamesley pour themselves wholeheartedly into the famous cryptid, considering it alongside the rich historical heritage of their hometown. Quote says, it's also a great way to introduce visitors to Point Pleasant's rich river and cultural history. There's lots of neat shops on Main Street and some interesting places and things to see added to the Mothman experience, he says. And so The caverns, mountains, and hollers of West Virginia are no stereotype. They house intriguing characters made resident in storytelling and supernatural American folklore. And true or not, one can unearth rich meanings in cryptids that tempt us to tell their tales. Blah, blah. So, our fears feed this process too. When a child sits cross-legged on the ground to hear the reasonings that they should never go into the abandoned power plant, what better way to bring the point home than a flying giant moth creature? And as those same kids grow into moody adolescents and then into young adults, seasoned humans, and the slope into elder storytellers themselves, legends like Mothman, told in the authentic Appalachian drawl, serve as a source of identity, memory, and place. So this is just like a really romantic way of saying, like, although oral tradition of storytelling has fallen out, especially with the introduction of like social media, it's kind of nice to see it on a little bit of a return in this way, because when tourists go to this town, the residents themselves have the chance of sharing stories of their own experiences with them, which kind of like is an enhancement of the experience in a way, because you don't really get a whole lot of that anymore in today's history.
I mean, I feel like you do a little bit with things like Reddit or like people's personal story times on like TikTok or YouTube, but yeah, it's definitely fallen off a bit from what it used to be.
Yeah, and you're totally right. I think that in those senses anyways, it probably, especially in the last couple of years, has become more popular than it was before. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, while Mothman is one of the most celebrated cryptids, let's say the Michelangelo of the Appalachian cryptid renaissance, there are numerous legends in the small towns of West Virginia. Or perhaps people from other places may be reminded of their own hometown folktales and legends. So take this as an ode to the spooky stories of small towns across America, from the Witches of Salem to the Jersey Devil to La Llorona, which I don't think I've told you about the Jersey Devil or La Llorona, have I? I think you know who La Llorona is, though.
I do, but I don't think you've talked about her.
Okay, well, I'll add that onto my little cryptid list, because apparently there are lots of things where I'm just like, yeah, this is common knowledge, and I've just never decided to share them. So, either way, just to wrap it up, historic or cautionary tales, angels or devils, let them stand as meaningful, even validating, and bask in the natural sense of enchantment that emanates from the mysterious, and again, in a very romantic way, meaning enjoy these stories, because even if we don't know where they come from or really how they started, they're kind of nice as a distraction in their own way, and that's almost enough to take it as it is.
Exactly.
But yeah, and that is the cute little story of a tall, spooky man named the Mothman. So was it anything you thought it was going to be?
Yes and no. I feel like the helicopter wings were especially unexpected, but good surprise.
Just a little sprinkle on top of the rest of the stories.
Exactly.
My favorite kind. But yeah, no, like I said, he's one of the cryptids that are definitely, I think, more popular today than some other ones. But yeah, definitely interesting in its own way, though.
Exactly. But I think that brings us to the end of our story for today.
That it does. And so, as per usual, we will begin our ending critics. So, to start, if you like today's show and you want to be able to give us a virtual thumbs up, you can leave us a 5-star review on anywhere you listen to this podcast, just supposing it's an option. It does help us with kind of the algorithms in all these different little broadcasting apps and help us to reach new listeners, so that would be fantastic. Besides that, we also have a website you can check out, which is www.wheelofcrime.com. To check us out there. We also have social media, which is Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, all at Wheel of Crime. If you want to look us up on there and get some updates on the show. We also have a Patreon, so if you want to be able to donate to the show and get a little something out of it, you can do that there. And lastly, we also have an email if you want to send in any suggestions for the show, as we received in the past, or if you want to share a story of your own, which we've also received in the past. We love being able to hear from you guys, and that is wheelofcrime@gmail.com.
Yes, that's it. That's all. And with that, we will see you next week for another new episode. Okay, bye!
Bye!